Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, the show here on Let's Talk Entertainment, where going back to 2018, I've been attempting to read and review each of the roughly 600 short stories written by the late, great Ray Bradbury. Today we are up to our 250 short story, which is called Apple Core Baltimore. It is the 16th of 22 stories in his collection from 2009, We'll Always Have Paris. The way that these reviews work is I do a brief synopsis of what happens in the story, and I wrap up with just a very light analysis of what I think it all means, what I took away from it. Is it a good story worth your time to read? All right, then. So on the way to the cemetery, a man named Menville stops at a roadside stand to buy a couple of apples for himself and his companion Smith. When they get to the cemetery, they find a headstone reading the name Russ Simpson, who he describes as having been his best friend in high school. He then proceeds to tell various stories about their time together in school, such as there was a strange game they would play where Smith would pick a word like Granger, and he'd ask each person in the group to say it, and everybody else would get this hilarious laugh by saying the word Granger and hearing how it's said, and then he would say the word and nobody would respond as if he'd done something wrong, as if he'd not said the word correctly. On another occasion, they were hanging out in one of their friends' houses. There's a balcony overlooking the living area. Menville is sitting on the couch, and one of their friends drops the cat off the balcony onto his head. It lands on top of his head, scratches him, hurts him, and he gets mad and throws the cat across the room. Instead of worrying about his well-being, Russ Simpson is more concerned about his cat. Then there's another game they played where it'd be at lunchtime. They'd sort of be seated in their own little table, their own little group in the lunchroom, and someone would finish eating an apple. They'd get down right to the core, and he would say apple core, and someone would yell Baltimore, and then they'd throw their apple cores at him, making him a sticky mess. On another occasion, Menville skipped lunch for like a month straight to save up money to have his own typewriter because he was an aspiring writer. When Russ Simpson found out about this, he said that, Menville, you're a stale fruitcake. And Menville always thought that this would be a good title for his novel. If he ever wrote the great American novel, he'd call it Stale Fruitcake, which he thought was better than The Great Gatsby. So as we're standing over Russ Simpson's grave, Menville's companion Smith suddenly says the word Granger, and Menville looks at him and says Granger, sort of questioningly, and then someone says apple core, and then someone says Baltimore, and they start throwing their apple cores at Russ Simpson's grave. And then Menville begins to walk away. Smith asks, where are you going? He says, I need to get more apples. So this is an odd little story that I think should resonate with anyone who has ever dealt with the horror of being bullied in school. But this is a particular type of bullying. This isn't the type of bullying where you're the complete outsider. It's almost a worse kind of bullying where you're sort of have this feeling that you're allowed to tag along, but yet you're not respected within your group. But it's your only group, so you sort of endure the abuse because you think these are your friends, these are your only friends, and if you didn't have them, you'd be completely isolated. So I think that this is very much resonant among people who have endured torture because of that fear of being alone, and sort of this misplaced idea of what friendship is at a young age. You sort of come to expect friendship to involve cruelty, and then maybe you don't learn it until much later in your life, as is the case with Menville. Menville here is visiting this grave with his friend Simpson, but Simpson is a true friend, and instead of throwing his apple core at Menville, he throws it at the gravestone, recognizing that this visit to this grave has some baggage with it. It's not just a friendly visit of a loved one lost. There's some animosity that's sort of continuing to affect his life, and it's affected his life for years after the death of this character, and maybe perhaps this is the occasion when, by doing this thing with the apple cores, perhaps he's finally having the opportunity or the ability to let go of the past and to sort of let go of the pain of the experience and realize who his true friends are, and that, here he's alive, he's still writing, he has real friends, and he doesn't need Russ Simpson anymore. So, I think this is a good little story. It's interesting because the games they played are really stupid. So in a sense, the story almost doesn't make any sense as you're reading. It's like, why would you say Granger, and why would you everybody laugh at everyone else saying it but sort of ignore him? And you realize it's just to be mean. It's a stupid, childish game. Therefore, it feels a little bit stupid in the story. But I think that that is one of the charms of Ray Bradbury, where he's able to distill complex emotions into this format that sort of accurately resembles the stupidity of youth, and somehow it all works. And I think it's a type of it's a gift in his writing that I think a lot of people underestimated. He's best known for his science fiction stories, which are a little bit more heady, but in the case of these other non-genre fiction stories, I think he could be underestimated. But I think he was a keen observer and a really good author for being able to how do you say it, to describe these raw, basic human emotions in a way that is palatable. I guess other than that, there's just the fact that I guess Menville is a writer, and it suggests to me, given that Bradbury often wrote autobiographically in some capacity, perhaps he is speaking from a little bit of experience here as well, which is heartening because he went on to become a legendary author, which means I think there's still hope for those of us who were bullied and who also were interested in writing as children to sort of separate ourselves from those painful pasts that most writers endure, but it's also the source of your power. All right, then, Apple Core Baltimore, story number 255. Next time we're moving on to the Reincarnate, which is our 256 short story, and also story number 17 of 22 in the collection We'll Always Have Paris, as we're getting closer and closer to wrapping it up. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below, and I'll see you again soon.